the photographer, and the ghost. She thought he was just another client with deep pockets. By the time she learned what Adrian Voss really did for a living, his name was already carved into her future. And 3 men were dead because of a photograph she took. Before we dive in, if you're watching from somewhere far from Boston tonight, Manila, Lagos, Berlin, a small town nobody's heard of, drop your city in the comments. I want to see how far this story travels. Hit that like button, stay with me all the way to the end, because the choice Clara Hayes makes in the final minutes is going to stay with you long after the screen goes dark. Now, let's begin. The rain in Boston had a personality that October, and it wasn't a kind one. Clara Hayes pulled her jacket tighter around her shoulders and kept walking, her camera bag bumping against her hip with every step. The strap had been fraying for 6 months. She kept meaning to replace it. She kept meaning to do a lot of things. $43, that was what sat in her checking account after the morning's automatic withdrawal for her studio rent. $43 and a wedding shoot tonight that would pay her $800, minus the 20% her booking agent took off the top, minus the Uber to the venue because her car had been making a sound she couldn't afford to investigate, minus the dry cleaning for the black dress she wore to every event, because she only owned one that didn't look like it had survived a war. 600 and something, maybe less. She'd do the math later. Math was always worse when you did it in advance. The venue was a renovated mill on the edge of the seaport, the kind of place that charged $30,000 for the room and another $20,000 for the catering and still managed to make the guests feel like they'd gotten a deal. Clara stood in the service entrance for a full minute before she went in, shaking the water out of her hair, wiping her lenses with the microfiber cloth she kept in her breast pocket. "You the photographer?" The coordinator was a woman in her 50s with a headset and a clipboard and absolutely no patience for anything. Clara nodded. "You're late." "I'm 10 minutes early." "You're late by my standards. Bride's in the green room. Go." Clara went. She'd been shooting weddings for 6 years. She knew the rhythm by heart, the nervous bride, the drunk uncle, the cousin who always tried to hit on her between the ceremony and the reception. She knew how to make herself invisible. That was the trick she'd figured out early. A wedding photographer wasn't a guest. She wasn't the help either, not exactly. She was a ghost with a camera, drifting from room to room, catching the moments nobody meant to give away. The bride was crying. Not ruined makeup crying, but the quieter kind, the kind that came from a place Clara recognized. Her mother sat beside her, holding one hand, saying nothing, the kind of silence that had a whole history inside it. Clara lifted her camera, clicked once. The bride looked up. "Oh, I didn't... Sorry, did you..." "It's a good one," Clara said quietly. "You'll want to have it." The bride studied her for a second, then smiled through the tears. "Okay." That was the job. Not the pose shots, not the first dance stuff. That was the job. Finding the small, unglamorous moment where somebody forgot they were performing and just existed for a second. Clara had a gift for it. She didn't know why. She'd had it since she was 16, borrowing her stepfather's old Pentax to shoot the kids at her bus stop before anyone else was awake. The ceremony came and went. The reception began. Clara worked the edges of the room, catching the grandfather dancing with his great-granddaughter, the groom's best man hiding in the coat room with his phone pressed to his ear, the flower girl falling asleep under a table with a chocolate-smeared face. And somewhere around the 3rd hour, she felt it. Someone watching her. Not looking at her, people looked at the photographer all the time. This was different. This was a particular kind of attention, steady and unblinking, the kind that made the back of her neck warm up even before she turned. He was standing against the far wall beside one of the enormous Edison bulb chandeliers the venue was so proud of. A tall man in a charcoal suit that fit him the way expensive suits fit people who had them made for their actual body, not their aspirational one. Black hair, gray at the temples. Mid-40s, maybe. He held a glass of something amber and he wasn't drinking it. He was watching her. Clara lowered her camera an inch, met his eyes across the room. He didn't look away. Most men, when you caught them staring, gave you the apologetic half smile and pretended they'd been looking at something behind you. Or they doubled down, smirked, lifted their drink, made it into a thing. This man did neither. He just kept looking at her, the way you might look at a painting you were trying to decide whether to buy. She broke first, turned back to her camera, pretended to adjust something. "Who's the guy in the gray suit by the bar?" she asked the bartender 20 minutes later, holding up her camera like she was checking a shot. The bartender, a kid who couldn't have been more than 23, glanced over and then looked back at her fast. Him? I don't know his name. You sure? I'm sure. The kid's voice had gone a little tight. Can I get you a water or something? I'm good, thanks. She didn't look at the man again for another hour. She didn't need to. She could feel him the way you feel a draft in a room. At 11:45, the reception started thinning. Clara packed her gear methodically, the way she always did, lens caps on, memory cards into the little velvet pouch, batteries into the charger. Her back hurt. Her feet hurt. Her jaw hurt from smiling. She slipped out the service entrance and found the rain had stopped. The alley smelled like wet cardboard and cigarette smoke. She pulled out her phone to request a ride and saw the battery was at 4%. Of course, she muttered. Miss Hayes. She froze. Turned. He was at the other end of the alley, just past the dumpster, the amber streetlight catching on the side of his face. Up close, he was taller than she'd thought. His eyes were the color of weak coffee, a warm brown that should have looked kind, and somehow didn't. Do I know you? Clara said. Her hand tightened on the strap of her camera bag. You don't. Adrian Voss. He didn't offer a handshake. He seemed to understand she wouldn't take one. I watched you work tonight. Yeah, I noticed. Something almost like a smile touched his mouth. I imagine you did. I wasn't being subtle. What do you want, Mr. Voss? To offer you a job. Clara's phone buzzed in her hand. The low battery warning, that rude red flash. She glanced at it, then back at him. Every instinct she'd developed in 31 years of being a woman alive in the world was telling her to walk away, to call her sister and stay on the phone until she was home. Every instinct except one, the one that knew what $43 looked like in a checking account at 11:45 p.m. on a Saturday. What kind of job? A portrait session, private. My home, next Thursday evening. He reached into his inside pocket and produced a business card. Heavy stock. Black ink on cream paper. Just a name and a number, nothing else. 6 hours of your time, $12,000. Clara stared at the card in his hand. Then she laughed, a short, unimpressed sound. What? She said. 12,000. Half on arrival, half when you leave. For portraits. For portraits. Of what? Of me. She didn't take the card. Not yet. Mr. Voss, I shoot weddings. I shoot engagements. I've shot a couple of bar mitzvahs. I'm not a celebrity portraitist. You could hire Annie Leibovitz for $12,000. I don't want Annie Leibovitz. Why not? He tilted his head. Considered her. Because I've seen Annie Leibovitz's work, and I've seen yours. You've seen mine. Your website, your Instagram, the piece you did for the Globe last year about the Haitian congregation in Hyde Park. The photograph of the old man and his wife, the one where she's looking at him like he's a stranger, and he's looking at her like she's the only person in the world. Clara felt a small, cold thing slide down the back of her neck. That photograph had run in the Sunday magazine 11 months ago. It had gotten her exactly no new clients. You went looking for me, she said. I went looking for someone. I found you. How'd you find me? I asked the coordinator who she'd hired. Then I went home and looked. He extended the card again, patient. Miss Hayes, I'm not asking you to do anything you haven't done 1,000 times. I'm asking you to photograph a man in his home. That's all. She looked at the card. She looked at her phone, now at 2%. She looked at his face, which had not changed, still watching her the way he'd watched her across the ballroom, with that steady, absorbing patience. She took the card. Thursday, she said, 7 o'clock. The address is on the back. She flipped it. A street number in Beacon Hill, Chestnut Street. She didn't know Beacon Hill well, but she knew enough to know what Chestnut Street meant. I'll be there. I know you will. He nodded once, stepped past her, and walked out of the alley toward a black sedan that had been idling at the curb the entire time they'd been talking. She hadn't noticed it. She should have noticed it. The back door opened before he reached it. He got in without looking back. The car pulled away. Clara stood in the alley with the business card in her hand and her phone at 1% and her heart beating somewhere much higher in her chest than it was supposed to. $12,000. $12,000 was her rent for 8 months. It was the repair on her car and the replacement of her flash unit that had died in June and the root canal she'd been putting off since February. It was air, it was oxygen. It was the difference between keeping her studio lease and giving it up and moving back in with her mother in Quincy and admitting that the 5 years she'd been calling herself a photographer had been, in the end, a hobby she couldn't afford. She walked 3 blocks in the wrong direction before she found a bar that looked halfway safe, ducked inside, and asked the bartender if she could charge her phone long enough to get a ride home. Her apartment was on the 3rd floor of a triple-decker in Dorchester, above a family who fought in Cape Verdean Creole at all hours, and a retired postal worker who fed the pigeons on the fire escape even though the landlord had told him 4 times to stop. Clara let herself in at 1:15 in the morning, dropped her bag, and stood in the dark for a minute, listening to her own breathing. Then she took out her laptop and Googled Adrian Voss Boston. The first result was a society page photograph from a charity gala. Him in a tuxedo, standing next to a woman in emerald green. The caption said, Adrian Voss of Voss Holdings attends the Mayor's Cup benefit. The second result was the Boston Business Journal profile from 4 years earlier. Voss Holdings, the quiet empire. She started to click on it, and her laptop froze for a second, the cursor spinning. When it loaded, the article was brief. 2 paragraphs about a real estate portfolio that had grown quietly from a single Back Bay brownstone in 1998 to a network of properties whose exact size, the reporter wrote, proved difficult to determine, as Mr. Voss declined multiple requests for interviews, and his holdings are distributed across more than 40 LLCs registered in 3 states. Clara scrolled. There were other results. A planning board meeting where Voss Holdings had successfully opposed a zoning variance. A foundation he ran that gave scholarships to first-generation college students in Roxbury. A mention, halfway down the second page, in an article about the indictment of a city councilman. Among those whose names surfaced in the investigation but who were not charged was the developer Adrian Voss, a longtime political donor. She read that one 3 times. Then she closed the laptop and sat on her couch in the dark and thought about what she was doing. $12,000. She thought about her mother, who had worked 2 jobs for most of Clara's childhood and had never once told Clara she was proud of the photography, because her mother was of a generation that did not believe art was a thing you did for money. Her mother believed in nursing degrees and teaching certificates and jobs with pensions. Her mother had cried, actually cried in the kitchen, on a Tuesday, when Clara had quit her administrative job at the hospital 4 years ago to shoot weddings full-time. She thought about the fraying camera strap. She thought about Adrian Voss's face in the alley, the way he'd said, "I know you will." Not as a threat, not as arrogance, but as a simple observation about a thing that had already been decided. She took a shower. She went to bed. She did not sleep much. Thursday came the way weekdays came when you were dreading something, too fast and also not fast enough. Clara spent the morning at a coffee shop, ostensibly editing a family session she'd shot the weekend before, actually staring at the same photograph of a 4-year-old with ice cream on his chin for 45 minutes without touching the exposure slider. Her sister Denise called at 11 and Clara let it go to voicemail. She told herself she'd text Denise when she got home. She'd tell her where she'd been and who she'd been with. And if Clara hadn't texted by 11 p.m., she was doing it, she realized. She was already running the protocol you ran when you were a woman about to do something you weren't sure about. Leave the address with someone. Share your location. Keep your phone in your pocket, not your bag. At 5:30, she went home and changed. She tried 3 outfits. Settled on black slacks and a gray sweater. Professional, not interesting. The clothes of someone who was there to work and nothing else. She put her hair up and then took it down and then put it up again. She stood in front of the mirror and said out loud, "It's 6 hours. It's $12,000. It's 6 hours." She did not look convinced. The house on Chestnut Street was a 4-story brick townhouse with black shutters and a brass door knocker shaped like a lion's head. The door opened before Clara had a chance to use the knocker. Miss Hayes, a woman in her 60s in a plain black dress, hair pulled back so severely it looked painful. "Please come in. Mr. Voss is in the library." "And you are?" "Mrs. Laurent. I manage the house." Her accent was faintly French, faintly something else. She did not offer a hand. May I take your coat? Clara surrendered her coat. She did not surrender her camera bag. Mrs. Laurent led her down a hallway lined with framed black and white photographs, not family pictures. Clara recognized a Cartier-Bresson, a Vivienne Mayer, two she didn't know, but which were clearly from that same mid-century street photography canon, the kind of prints that sold for 5 figures at the right auction. The library was at the back of the house. Floor-to-ceiling books on 3 walls, a fireplace on the 4th, a pair of leather armchairs angled toward each other in front of the hearth. Adrian Voss was in the left one, in shirt sleeves and dark trousers, reading a hardcover with a plain blue dust jacket. He closed the book when Clara came in, but he didn't put it down. He held it in his lap like a prop. Miss Hayes, thank you for coming. Mr. Voss? Adrian. Adrian, Clara said evenly. He gestured to the opposite armchair. Please. She sat, put her camera bag at her feet, did not unzip it. I'd like to talk first. Of course. Your collection in the hallway, that's real Cartier-Bresson. It is. The Vivienne Mayer is a print from the original negatives, not a posthumous one. You'd have had to know someone on the estate. His mouth did the not-quite-smile thing again. I did. I do. So you know photography. I know photographers. It's not the same thing. You hired me because photographers who know photography take pictures of photography. You take pictures of people. I want a picture of myself. I don't want to be composed. I don't want to be flattered. I want... He paused, and for a second his eyes flicked to the fire, and Clara caught something there. Something that wasn't the calm, patient watchfulness of the alley. I want to see what you see when you look at me. Clara was quiet for a moment. That's an unusual request. Is it? Most people who hire a portrait photographer want to look like themselves on their best day. You're describing the opposite. I'm describing the truth. The truth is a lot to ask of a photograph. Is it? She looked at him. He looked back at her. The fire made small, reasonable sounds. Why me, Adrian? He set the book on the small table beside his chair, steepled his fingers. The shirt was white, expensive, cuffs turned back twice on each forearm. His wrists were leaner than she'd expected. There was a man in the photograph you took for the Globe, he said. The one with the old couple, not the husband or the wife. A man in the background, out of focus. He's sitting in a pew, maybe 3 rows behind them. He's looking down at his hands. You probably didn't notice him when you took the picture. I noticed him. I cropped him out for the magazine. The editor wanted the focus on the couple. The version on your personal website has him in it. Clara's jaw tightened. You went looking pretty hard. I went looking for a while, yes. What about him? I knew him 30 years ago. He was a different man then. When I saw your picture of him, sitting in that church, looking at his hands the way he was looking at them, I understood something about him I had not understood in 3 decades. Adrian's voice had gone very quiet. That photograph told me something true about a man I had known my entire adult life. You did that without ever speaking to him, without knowing his name. His name was Lorenzo David. He died 4 months after I took that picture. I know. I was at the funeral. The fire cracked. Somewhere in the house, a clock was ticking. Clara could hear her own pulse behind her ears. Who are you, Adrian? He picked up the book again. Not to read it, just to have something in his hands. A man who would like his portrait taken, he said. Nothing more complicated than that. Not tonight. Boom. She shot him for 4 hours. She didn't use the lights she'd brought. The firelight was better. She moved around the library like she was working a wedding, invisible, letting him do whatever he wanted to do. He read the book for a while. He poured himself a glass of whiskey and didn't drink it. He stood at one of the windows and looked out at the small walled garden behind the house, and the garden was lit by a single lamp. And for almost a full minute, he didn't move at all, didn't shift his weight, didn't breathe hard enough to see, didn't do any of the small, restless things most people did when they stopped pretending to be busy. Clara took that photograph 3 times. She took him by the fire, reading. She took him in the doorway between the library and the hallway, one hand on the frame, looking at something she couldn't see. She took him from behind, at the window, and the back of his neck in the low light looked older than the front of him had. Around the 3rd hour, she said, "Can I ask you something?" "Yes." "Are you married?" "I was. She died in 2019. I'm sorry. Thank you. Children? No. Siblings? A sister. We don't speak. Why not? He looked at her. For the first time all night, there was something sharp in his face, not hostile, but alert, the way a man looked when someone had gotten closer than he'd been ready for. Because I became a man, she did not want to know, he said. Clara took that photograph too. She shouldn't have. It felt afterward like she'd done something she wouldn't be able to take back. At 11:15, Mrs. Laurent knocked on the library door and brought in a small cherrywood box. Adrian opened it, counted without looking like he was counting, and handed Clara an envelope. 6,000, he said. The other half when you deliver the prints. I'd like them on fiber-based paper, matte, no smaller than 11 by 14. Your selection. Whatever you think is best. Whatever feels true. Clara took the envelope. It was heavier than she'd expected. She had never held $6,000 in her hand before. I'll have them in 2 weeks. Take 3. Take a month. Don't rush it. She packed up her gear. Mrs. Laurent appeared with her coat. At the front door, Adrian put out his hand, and this time Clara took it. His palm was cool. His grip was firm without being aggressive. He held her hand a beat longer than he needed to. Miss Hayes. Clara. A small nod. I hope we'll work together again. We'll see how these come out. We will. She walked out onto Chestnut Street with $6,000 in her coat pocket and a camera bag full of photographs of a man she didn't understand. The streetlights made pools of yellow on the wet brick sidewalk. Her ride share was already waiting at the corner. She didn't text Denise. She didn't look at the photographs on her laptop when she got home. She sat on her couch with the envelope on the coffee table in front of her for almost an hour, just looking at it. And when she finally went to the kitchen to pour herself a glass of water, her hand was shaking badly enough that she had to use 2 hands to hold the cup. She didn't look at the pictures for 4 days. She kept meaning to. She kept opening her laptop and then finding something else to do. Laundry, editing the family session, a drink with her friend Marisol from the photo collective where Clara rented darkroom time on the weekends. Marisol asked her 3 times over 2 glasses of wine if she was okay, and Clara said yes 3 times and meant it less each time. On the 5th day, she made herself sit down. She imported the files. She walked away. She came back. She opened the first folder, and she looked at Adrian Voss's face on her screen, and she understood, with a cold, exact clarity, that she had done the best work of her life. The photograph at the window was a photograph of a man who had killed people. She didn't know how she knew. She couldn't have put it into words. There was nothing in the image that announced it. No gun, no shadow, no theatrical cliché. It was just his face, in profile, looking at a garden in the rain, and in the set of his mouth and the stillness of his shoulders, there was a weight she recognized without having a name for it. The weight of something that could not be put down. Clara sat in front of her laptop for a long time. Then she opened a new browser tab and typed, carefully, Adrian Voss, Boston Associates Investigation. The first article was from 8 months earlier. A federal racketeering case involving money laundering through a chain of North End restaurants. 2 men had pled out. A third was dead in what the papers had called an apparent suicide. Adrian Voss's name appeared in the 14th paragraph, not as a defendant, not as a witness, but as the majority owner of the holding company that had leased the buildings to the restaurants in question. Mr. Voss, through his attorney, declined to comment and was not named in the indictment. Clara scrolled further. There was another article, older. A contractor in Somerville who had been beaten badly outside his own home in 2021. Broken jaw, broken ribs, the assault never solved. The contractor, the article noted, had been in a legal dispute with a Voss Holdings subsidiary over an unfinished project. There was a third article. There was a fourth. She closed the laptop. She stood up and walked into her kitchen and stood in front of her refrigerator with her hands flat on the freezer door for a long time. And when she finally turned around, she saw the envelope still sitting on her coffee table, and she thought about the $6,000 inside it, and she thought about her checking account, and she thought about her mother in Quincy, and she thought about the photograph of the garden, and the way Adrian Voss had held her hand a beat longer than he'd needed to. I hope we'll work together again. Her phone buzzed on the counter. A text from a number she didn't recognize. "This is Adrian. Mrs. Laurent gave me your number. Forgive the intrusion. I wanted to say, there's no hurry on the prints. Take the time you need." Clara stared at the message. She did not reply. She went back to her couch, sat down in the exact spot she'd been sitting in when she first looked at the photographs, and in the silence of her apartment on a Tuesday night in October, she understood that she had already crossed a line. She just hadn't decided yet in which direction. She did not reply to the text that night, or the next morning, or the morning after that. The phone sat on her kitchen counter like a small animal she was afraid to feed. Clara made coffee around it. She washed dishes around it. Every so often, she'd pick it up to check the weather or scroll through her email, and the text would still be there, unanswered, near the top of her messages. "Forgive the intrusion," in that even, unhurried voice that sounded exactly like he sounded in person. On the third morning, she picked up her phone and typed, "Thank you. I'll have them ready in 2 weeks." She read it twice. She deleted it. She typed, "Thanks. I'll be in touch," and sent it before she could talk herself out of it. His reply came within a minute. "Good." That was all. Just the one word. Clara stared at it for a while and then put her phone down and went to the dark room at the collective. Marisol was already there, hunched over the enlarger in Bay 3, wearing the same stretched-out gray sweatshirt she wore every time she printed. She glanced up when Clara came in and said, "You look like hell." "Thanks." "Are you eating?" "Yes, Marisol." "Because you don't look like you're eating." Clara set her bag down in Bay 5, the one at the far end that nobody liked because the sink leaked. "I'm eating. I just haven't been sleeping." "Boyfriend?" "No." "Money?" "Not right now, for once." Marisol straightened up and wiped her hands on the front of her sweatshirt and looked at her properly. Marisol was 51, Puerto Rican, divorced twice, taught photography at the community college in Quincy. She had the kind of face that could make you confess to things you hadn't confessed to yourself yet. "So what is it?" Marisol said. Clara considered the question. She considered, for one stupid second, telling her all of it, the alley and the townhouse and the $6,000 in cash and the articles she'd found. Marisol would listen. Marisol would be smart about it. Marisol would probably also tell her to return the money and walk. And Clara already knew, with a sick certainty she was trying very hard not to look at, that she wasn't going to do that. "I got a weird portrait commission," Clara said. "Rich guy, lots of money. I'm printing his stuff tonight." "How rich?" "Rich enough?" Marisol studied her, didn't ask the follow-up, just said, "Be careful with rich clients. They always think they own the pictures and the photographer." "Yeah," Clara said, "I know." She spent the next 6 hours printing. She'd decided on 12 final images. She'd made the selects over the weekend, narrowing 194 frames down to 30, then 15, then 12. She printed them one at a time on fiber-based paper, the way he'd asked. The slow, expensive kind, the kind that took an hour in the wash tray and made your whole apartment smell like Fixer for 2 days afterward. She worked in the old way, using her hands to dodge and burn, feeling the image come up in the developer, the way you feel an answer come up when you've been holding the question for a long time. The picture at the window was the last one she printed. She pulled it out of the developer and held it under the safe light, and she looked at Adrian Voss's face in profile, and she thought, not for the first time that week, but with a new and unsettling clarity, "You are a beautiful man. Not handsome, not good-looking. Beautiful in the specific way that certain faces were beautiful, the way certain stones in certain light were beautiful, the beauty that had nothing to do with whether you wanted to live near it." She dried the prints overnight, flattened them under boards the next day, signed and numbered the backs. She packaged them in a black archival portfolio case she'd bought years ago and had never had a reason to use. She texted Mrs. Laurent's number that Adrian had forwarded her and said the prints were ready. Mrs. Laurent wrote back 20 minutes later, Friday evening, 8 o'clock. "Mr. Voss would like you to join him for dinner." Clara read the message and sat very still at her kitchen table. "Dinner." She texted back, "I can drop them off earlier if that's easier." Mr. Voss was specific. Of course he was. Clara set the phone down and put her head in her hands for a full minute, and then she got up and went to her closet and stood in front of the one dress that wasn't her working dress. The dark green one she'd bought for a cousin's engagement party 2 years ago and hadn't worn since. And she thought about wearing it and decided she wouldn't and then decided she would. and then slammed the closet door shut and went to the kitchen to pour herself a drink. Friday came up cold and bright. Clara spent the day at her studio, ostensibly working on a family holiday card shoot, actually rehearsing what she was going to say to him in 1,000 small variations. She was going to thank him, deliver the prints, decline dinner politely, and leave. That was the plan. She recited it in her head like the Pledge of Allegiance. At 7:30, she put on the green dress. She told herself it was because it was the only thing she owned that didn't look like she'd come to work. She told herself the same thing when she put on lipstick for the first time in 4 months. She told herself a lot of things on the ride over, and the rideshare driver kept looking at her in the mirror like he could hear her doing it. Mrs. Laurent opened the door again. Tonight she was in a navy dress, the same severe hair, the same not quite warm welcome. She took Clara's coat without comment and said, "Mr. Voss is in the dining room. I brought the... I'll take them. I'd rather give them to him directly." Mrs. Laurent's eyes rested on Clara for a half-second longer than was polite. "Of course," she said. "This way." The dining room was smaller than Clara had expected. Intimate, really, which was a word she didn't want to be thinking. A round table set for two, candles. A fireplace, lower burning than the one in the library, more glow than heat. Adrian stood when she came in. He was in a dark sweater and gray trousers, no tie, no jacket, and he looked, she hated that she noticed it, younger than he had the first night, softer around the edges. "Clara, Adrian, thank you for coming. Thank you for the commission." He came around the table and took the portfolio case from her hands, set it carefully on a sideboard. "Shall we look now or after?" "After," she said. "I'll be too nervous during dinner otherwise." A small laugh surprised out of him. "Fair. After, then. Sit, please." She sat. Mrs. Laurent poured wine without being asked and disappeared. Clara picked up the glass and then, remembering that she'd eaten half a granola bar at 4 o'clock, set it back down. "I should eat something before I drink that." "That's why we're eating." A young man in a white shirt brought bread, then soup, something with mushrooms and a drift of something green on top. Clara was not a soup person, but this was the kind of soup that made you reconsider being a soup person. She ate it too fast. Adrian watched her eat the way he'd watched her work at the wedding. That steady absorbing attention that seemed to take something from you and give nothing back. "How long have you been a photographer?" he said. "Professionally?" 6 years. I picked up a camera when I was 16. "Why 16? My stepfather had an old Pentax. He never used it. I took it out one morning to shoot the kids at my bus stop. I liked it. I kept doing it." "Your stepfather's still living?" "He died the year after. Cancer." "I'm sorry." "It's all right. He wasn't much of a father. He was good to my mother, though. That was what mattered to her." Adrian nodded slowly. He hadn't touched his soup. "You don't eat?" Clara said. "I eat. I forget sometimes. It comes and goes." "That's a thing. For me it is." "What's the sometimes?" He looked at her across the candles. "Weeks like this one." She didn't ask what he meant. She had a feeling if she asked, he would tell her, and she was not ready to know. They moved to the main course. Fish, something white, with a lemon sauce and small roasted potatoes that tasted like they'd been cooked in duck fat. Clara, who had lived on rice and eggs for most of September, felt her body respond to the food like a dry plant responded to water. It was embarrassing. She hoped he didn't notice. He noticed. "Eat," he said quietly. "Please, I have more in the kitchen." "I'm eating." "I can see that." She put down her fork. "Can I ask you a question?" "Yes." "What do you actually do, Adrian?" He cut a small piece of fish, chewed, took his time with it. "I own properties. I lease properties. I make investments. Most of what I do is sign documents and have conversations." "What kind of conversations?" "The kind where I tell people what I want and they tell me what it would cost to give me what I want, and then we negotiate." "And when they don't give you what you want?" He looked up from his plate. The candlelight made his eyes look darker than they were. "Why are you asking me this, Clara?" "Because I looked you up." "I imagine you did. I'd have been disappointed if you hadn't." "I read an article about a contractor in Somerville." He set down his knife and fork, folded his hands in his lap. The whole of his attention came on her like a hand pressed lightly against her chest. "Yes," he said. "Yes, what?" "Yes, I read that article too. Yes, I know the contractor. Yes, he was in a dispute with a company I own. Yes, he was hurt. And no, since that will be your next question, I did not do it. I did not order it. I did not pay for it. Do you know who did? I have theories. Theories you haven't shared with the police. The police are not always the right instrument, Clara." "Then what's the right instrument?" He looked at her for a long moment. Then he picked up his wine glass and drank from it. The first drink she'd seen him take since the wedding. "Time," he said. "Usually time." Clara pushed her plate back an inch. She wasn't hungry anymore. The wine was going to her head, and she knew she should slow down, and she didn't. "I'm going to tell you something," she said. "All right. When I printed your pictures, I looked at the one by the window, and I knew something about you that I couldn't have known from the facts I'd read. I knew it from the photograph. Do you understand what I'm telling you?" "Yes." "What am I telling you, Adrian?" He set his glass down carefully. The fire behind him had burned down to embers. The young man in the white shirt had come in and gone out again without Clara noticing. "You're telling me you see what you see," he said. "That's what I hired you for. That's what you did. I am not going to insult you by pretending the photograph is wrong. And I'm not going to insult you by explaining to you what it's right about. That's not good enough. I'm aware. I can't work for you again. If what I saw in that picture is true, I came here tonight to tell you that. I should have told you in a text. I'm sorry. I'll give back the second half of the payment." "No, you won't." "Excuse me? I'm not taking it back. The work is done. The work is good. You earned what I paid you, and you will keep what I paid you. And that's the end of that part of the conversation." "Adrian, Clara, listen to me." He leaned forward a little. His voice had gone quieter, not louder, which was somehow worse. "I did not invite you here tonight to coerce you. I did not invite you here tonight to seduce you. I invited you here tonight because I wanted to see you again, and I did not know how to do that without a pretext, and dinner seemed a civilized pretext. You are free to leave at any time. You are free to never speak to me again. If that is what you want, I will send your portfolio case back to you tomorrow by courier, and I will not contact you again, and the matter will end there. I am telling you this so that whatever you decide next, you decide it freely." Mas Xochindol. Clara stared at him. It was the worst thing he could have said. If he'd threatened her, she'd have known what to do. If he'd flattered her, she'd have known what to do. Instead, he'd handed her back her own agency like a coat he'd been holding for her, and now she had to decide what to do with it. "Show me the pictures," she said. They looked at them in the library. He spread them on the long table between the windows, under the lamp he'd been standing at in the third one, and he went through them slowly, picking each print up by the corners and holding it at different distances from his face. He did not speak. Clara stood on the other side of the table with her arms folded and watched him look at himself through her eyes. When he got to the window picture, he stopped. He held it for a long time. "This one," he said finally. "Yeah." "This is the one you were talking about?" "Yes." "Can I buy the negative?" "I shot it digital." "The file, then?" "I want it. I don't want anyone to ever see this photograph except me." Clara felt something cold go through her. "Why?" "Because you're right about what's in it." He set the print down on the table, very carefully, the way you set down something you were trying not to break. "And I don't want anyone else to know. I'll pay you whatever you want for it." "I'll give it to you." He looked up. "I'll give it to you," she said again. "I don't want to be paid for that one. I'll send you the file tomorrow. You own it. Do what you want." "Thank you. Don't thank me. Just don't ever ask me to take another one like it." "I won't." She believed him. That was the strange part. She believed him about that, and she did not believe him about most of the rest of what he had said, and she wasn't sure what to do with the combination. She was supposed to leave then. She knew she was. She was supposed to take her coat from Mrs. Laurent and get in the rideshare and go home and delete his number and chalk the whole thing up to a story she'd tell Marisol in 10 years. Instead, she said, "I'll take one more glass of wine, and then I'll go." He poured her one more glass of wine. They did not talk about the Somerville contractor again that night. They talked about photographers. about Vivian Mayer, whom he'd met once before she was famous, when she was a nanny for a family he'd known. They talked about Boston, about the way the city was changing, about the coffee shop in Dorchester where Clara liked to work, and the bakery in the North End where Adrian went on Saturdays because the woman who ran it had known his mother. He talked about his mother. Clara talked about hers. Somewhere around 11:30, she realized she had been in his house for 3.5 hours and had not once looked at her watch on purpose. She stood up. "I have to go." "I know." "Thank you for dinner." "Thank you for the prints." In the front hall, Mrs. Laurent brought her coat. Adrian walked her to the door. He did not touch her. He did not try. He opened the door and stood in it, and Clara stepped out onto the stoop and turned back, and he was standing there in the warm light from the hallway, in his dark sweater with the sleeves pushed up, and something in Clara's chest did a small, terrible thing she had been trying to keep it from doing for about 40 minutes. "Good night, Clara." "Good night, Adrian." She got in the car. She did not look back at the house. She looked at her phone instead, at the dark screen, at her own reflection in it, and she looked tired, and she looked like someone who had just done something she was going to have to explain to herself later. He did not contact her for 11 days. On the 12th day, he sent a text. "There's a gallery opening at Reyes Fine Art on Newbury Street this Thursday. A Cuban photographer I've collected for years. I'd like to bring you as my guest. No work, just the show." Clara looked at the message for about 10 minutes. Then she typed, "What time?" 7. "I'll meet you there." She met him there. She had not owned a dress appropriate for Newbury Street galleries at any point in her adult life. She wore the green one again, with a scarf she borrowed from Marisol, who asked a lot of questions Clara answered evasively. Reyes Fine Art occupied the second floor of a brownstone she had walked past 100 times without ever going in. Adrian was already there when she arrived, standing near the entrance, talking to a woman with silver hair and enormous earrings. He saw Clara come in and his whole face changed. Not dramatically, not in any way anyone else would have noticed, but she noticed, and she hated that she noticed, and she hated more that it pleased her to notice it. He introduced her to the woman with silver hair who turned out to be the gallery owner, Nilda Reyes. He introduced her to the photographer, a man in his 70s with a white beard and a hand-rolled cigarette he wasn't allowed to light indoors. The photographer studied Clara for a moment and then said, in accented English, "You also shoot?" "Yes." "What do you shoot?" "People. Mostly." "Show me your phone." She pulled up her website. He scrolled with one thick finger. He paused on the photograph of the old couple in the church, the one Adrian had seen, the one that had brought her to this room on this evening in this borrowed scarf. He looked at it for a long time. He handed the phone back. "Ella tiene ojo," he said to Adrian. "Lo sé," Adrian said. "What did he say?" Claire asked. "He said you have an eye." Adrian was watching her. I agreed. Nilda Reyes appeared at Clara's elbow half an hour later with a glass of champagne and a proposal. She'd been looking at the images on Clara's website. She wanted to talk seriously about a possible show. Not soon, there was a schedule, but next year, maybe in the spring. Was Clara working on a body of work? Clara said she was. Clara was not. Clara said yes to a meeting the following week. When she glanced across the room, Adrian was watching her from the far wall. He raised his glass an eighth of an inch. He was not smiling. He looked for a second like a man who had put something in motion and was now watching it move. She left the gallery at 10. He walked her to the sidewalk. The street was cold and crowded with people spilling out of restaurants, and he stood beside her on the curb with his hands in his pockets and said, "You don't have to call her back." "What?" "Nilda, if you're not ready, you don't have to." "Did you tell her to—" "I sent her 3 of your prints 2 months ago. I told her who you were. I told her I thought she should see your work. Whatever she said to you tonight, she said because she meant it. I want you to know that. I don't buy people, Clara. I do open doors. The walking through is yours." Clara looked at him. The cold was making her eyes water. "I don't know how to do any of this," she said. "I know. I don't know how to tell what's real from what's arranged." "I know that too. I'm scared of you." He didn't flinch. He didn't argue. He just nodded once and said, "That's the correct response." A car pulled up. Not his usual black one. A different one, smaller, a driver she hadn't seen before. Adrian opened the back door for her. "Good night, Clara." "Adrian." She got in. She did not look back. She looked at her hands in her lap and saw that they were steady, which surprised her. And then she realized she was holding the gallery card Nilda Reyes had given her, and the card was bent because she'd been squeezing it. The meeting with Nilda Reyes happened the following Wednesday. By the end of it, Clara had a verbal agreement for a solo show in May of the following year, contingent on producing 25 new photographs around a unifying theme. Nilda wanted something personal, something about Boston, something, she said, that only Clara could see. By the end of that week, Clara had 2 magazine assignments, small ones from editors Nilda had put her in touch with, but they paid real money, and they came with photo credits that would lead to more. By the end of November, Clara had quit 2 of her 3 weekly wedding retainers. By the first week of December, she had signed a new lease on her studio, 1 year, with an option, at a rate she could actually meet without panic. Adrian had paid for none of it. She kept checking. She looked at the deposits coming in, the invoices, the names on the contracts. None of them went back to him. None of them had his fingerprints anywhere she could see. And yet she knew, the way she'd known his face at the window, that everything happening to her was happening because he had decided it should happen. She didn't confront him about it. She went to dinner at his house twice more in November. She met him for coffee on a Saturday morning at the bakery in the North End, where the woman behind the counter had kissed his cheek when he came in and then looked at Clara with a frankness that was almost rude. She went with him to a small concert at a church in the South End, a cellist he'd funded through some obscure arts program, and they sat in the back row, and he held her coat for her when she took it off and did not put his arm around her. He did not touch her. Not once. Not a hand on her lower back as she went through a doorway, not a knee against hers under a table. Nothing. She had never in her life been courted by a man who did not touch her, and she did not know what to call what was happening, and the not knowing was doing something to her that she recognized as dangerous and could not seem to stop. The first week of December, at dinner, she reached across the table and put her hand on his. He looked at her hand. He looked at her face. He turned his hand over slowly and let her fingers lace with his. "Clara, I know. You understand what you're doing. I understand that I don't understand what I'm doing. That's what I understand. That's not enough. It has to be because that's all I have." He was quiet for a long time. The candles had burned halfway down. The second course had come and gone, and they hadn't eaten much of it. Mrs. Laurent had stopped coming in to check, which Clara understood, belatedly, meant that Mrs. Laurent had been instructed to stop coming in to check. "Come with me," Adrian said. He led her by the hand upstairs to a room on the second floor that was not a bedroom, a study with a desk and more books and a pair of French doors that opened onto a tiny balcony over the back garden. He opened the doors. The cold came in. There was a light dusting of snow on the railing, the first of the season. He stood her at the railing and stood behind her, and he did not put his arms around her. He just stood there, close enough that she could feel him, and he spoke quietly over her shoulder. "I need to tell you who I am," he said. "Now? Now, tonight, before this goes any further." "Okay. My father was a man named Constantin Voss. He came to Boston from Hamburg in 1962. He was not a good man. He made money in ways I will not describe to you tonight. When he died, I was 28. I inherited what he had built. I spent the next decade legitimizing what I could and severing what I could not. That process is not finished. It may not finish in my lifetime. There are people who expect things from me that my father promised them, and some of those things I provide, and some of those things I refuse, and the refusing has a cost that other people pay for me sometimes. That is what happened to the contractor in Somerville. He was not hurt because of me. He was hurt because of a man who wanted to send me a message, and I did not respond to the message the way that man expected me to, and so the cost was paid by a stranger. I tell you this not to justify it. I tell you this so you understand that I live in a world where other people pay the costs of my decisions. If you stand close to me, someone will eventually decide that you are a cost I can be made to pay. Do you understand?" Clara was shaking. She realized she was shaking, and she could not stop. "Yes. I am telling you to go home, Clara. I am telling you that the best thing I can do for you is let you go home tonight and not answer when you call me tomorrow. That is the thing that a good man would do. I am not a good man. I am telling you what a good man would do, and I am not going to do it unless you tell me to do it. Do you understand? She turned around. His face was very close. She could see the small line at the corner of his mouth, the gray at his temples, the tired, intelligent, terrible beauty of him. I can't tell you to do it, she said. I know. I've tried. I've tried for 6 weeks. I know. Adrian? Yes. If someone comes for me, if someone decides I'm a cost, then I will spend everything I have stopping them. Everything. Do you understand what I'm saying? Yes. Say it back to me. You'll stop them. Whatever it takes. Whatever it takes. She nodded. She could not speak. The snow was falling a little harder now, and she could feel it on her face and her hair, and she realized she was crying, had been crying quietly for a while, and she had not known it. He brought his hand up, finally, and touched her cheek. Just that. Just his cool, dry palm against her cheek, the way he had touched nothing of hers for 6 weeks. I'm so sorry, Clara, he said. For what? For not being able to send you away. She closed her eyes. Downstairs, somewhere in the house, a phone rang. Mrs. Laurent answered it. Her voice was low and quick, too low for Clara to hear words. Then there were footsteps on the stairs, which Mrs. Laurent did not usually do, and a knock on the door of the study that Mrs. Laurent also did not usually do. Sir. Adrian turned. Yes. It's Mr. Halloran on the phone. He says it's urgent. Something changed in Adrian's face. Clara saw it happen. The softness that had been there for her a moment ago did not disappear. It simply moved, stepped aside, like a curtain being pulled back from a window, and behind it was the man she had photographed at this same window 6 weeks ago. I'll take it in my office, Adrian said. Mrs. Laurent, would you bring Miss Hayes her coat, please? I'll arrange the car. I can wait. No. He turned back to Clara. The new face was already softening at the edges again, but not all the way. Something's happened. I need to deal with it. I'll call you tomorrow. Adrian, what? Tomorrow, Clara. Please. She let Mrs. Laurent bring her coat. She let the driver take her home. She sat in the back of the car and watched the streetlights slide across the ceiling, and she thought, something's happened. She thought, whatever it is already happening, and I am already inside it, and I walked in on my own feet. When she got to her apartment, she turned on every light. She put her camera bag down by the door. She stood in the middle of her living room in her coat for a long time. Then she walked over to her desk, to the hard drive where she kept her work, and she opened the folder labeled VOS and looked at the photograph of the man at the window. The snow had started falling harder outside her own window now. Her phone, on the kitchen counter, was silent. She stood there looking at the photograph until her feet got cold, and then she stood there a while longer. He did not call her the next day. Clara woke at 6, before her alarm, the way you woke when your body had been waiting all night to stop pretending to sleep. She checked her phone. Nothing. She made coffee. She checked her phone. She opened the curtains and saw that the snow had kept coming overnight. 3 or 4 inches on the fire escape, the whole city gone muffled in white under it. And she checked her phone. She took a shower. She checked her phone. At 9:30, she made herself go out. She walked down to the corner and got a bagel from the place she never went to because she couldn't usually afford it, and she ate it standing up in the window looking at the snow coming down in soft diagonal lines, and she did not allow herself to look at her phone for a full 40 minutes. When she finally did, there was one text from Denise, asking if she was coming to Thanksgiving at their mother's next week. Nothing from Adrian. She went home. She worked. He was supposed to be editing a corporate headshot session from 2 weeks ago, and she opened the files and sat in front of them and could not make herself touch anything. She ended up at her desk with a cup of coffee going cold beside her, scrolling the Globe website on her laptop like a person waiting for news. It came at 12:14. Man found dead in East Cambridge parking garage. Police investigating. The headline was small, tucked into the metro section. Clara clicked on it with a sick, slow certainty. The man's name was Dimitri Halloran. He was 47. He had been found in the stairwell of a parking garage off Cambridge Street just after 6 that morning by a janitor. Cause of death was not yet confirmed, but the police were treating the death as suspicious. The article noted that Mr. Halloran had been a partner in a real estate development firm, Halloran Brecht, which had been involved in an ongoing dispute with a larger holding company over a waterfront parcel. The holding company was not named in the article. Clara stared at the screen. Mr. Halloran on the phone. He says it's urgent. She said it out loud, softly, in the quiet of her apartment. No. Just that. Once. No. She closed the laptop. She opened it. She searched his name again. She read 3 more articles, all of them versions of the same thing, all of them careful, all of them lawyered. She searched Halloran Voss Holdings and found a 2-year-old article about a lawsuit Halloran Brecht had filed against a Voss subsidiary, which had been quietly settled out of court in 2023. She sat back from the desk. What? She thought, I photographed him. I was in his house. He held my hand. He told me last night that he was not a good man, and he said it like it was a warning, and I took the warning and I let him touch my face anyway, and now a man is dead this morning, and he called Adrian's house at 11:30 to say it was urgent, and he is dead by 6. She was going to throw up. She didn't. She got up and went to the sink and ran the cold water and held her wrists under it until the shaking stopped. Her phone rang at 1:18. She almost didn't answer. The name on the screen was his. She let it ring 3 times. She answered on the 4th. Clara. What did you do? A pause. Long enough that she thought the connection had dropped. Then, are you home? What did you do, Adrian? I'm not going to do this on the phone. Are you home? Yes? I'll be there in 20 minutes. Don't, Clara. Don't come here. I don't want you here. 20 minutes. I'll wait in the car if you won't let me in. Please. He hung up. She stood in her kitchen with the phone still pressed to her ear, listening to the silence on the other end, and then she set the phone down on the counter very carefully, like it was a thing that might break. She walked into her living room. She looked at the couch where she'd sat with the envelope of cash. She looked at her camera bag by the door. She looked at the front window where, 20 minutes from now, a black car was going to pull up. She had a choice. She could see the choice very clearly, laid out in front of her like the contact sheets from a shoot. She could not be here when he arrived. She could put on her boots and her coat and walk out the back, down the fire escape, across the alley to the street, and get on a bus, and go to her sister's, and from there to her mother's, and she could stop answering her phone and change her number, and give back her lease, and disappear into the life she had had before October. The one with the $43 and the fraying camera strap and the weddings and the soup kitchen Sundays with Marisol, and nothing that had happened in the last 6 weeks would follow her there because she would close every door behind her and lock it. She could do that. She stood in her living room and knew she could do it and did not do it. When the doorbell rang at 1:39, she was sitting on the edge of the couch with her hands folded in her lap, still in the clothes she'd put on that morning, waiting. She buzzed him up without speaking. He came up the stairs slowly. She could hear him, the careful tread on the old wooden steps. And when she opened the door, he was standing on the landing in a black overcoat with snow still melting on the shoulders. And his face was the face from the photograph, the one at the window, the one he had asked her to give him and never show to anyone else. He had not bothered, this time, to put the curtain back. "Come in," she said. He came in. She closed the door behind him. She did not take his coat. "Did you kill him?" "No." "Did you order it?" "No." "Did you know it was going to happen?" A long, terrible pause. "I knew something was going to happen," he said. "I did not know what, and I did not know when, and I did not know to whom. I knew because of the call last night. I knew because of what he said on the call. He was not—" "Clara, please sit down." "No." "All right." He stood in the middle of her living room in his melting coat and did not sit down either. There was a puddle forming on her rug under his shoes. He did not seem to notice. She noticed everything. "Dmitry Halloran," he said, "was not a developer. Or he was, but that's not why he is dead. He was a man who took money from a person I have been in a long disagreement with for almost 10 years. And he took that money to buy a piece of property I wanted, and he took it specifically to keep me from having it. And last night at 11:30 he called my house to tell me he had reconsidered. He said he was willing to sell to me. He said he'd realized he'd made a mistake. He said he wanted to meet in the morning to sign papers. He was terrified on the phone, Clara. He was begging. And I knew, the moment he said it, that he was not calling me because he had changed his mind. He was calling me because someone had made him call me. He was calling me to get me to come and meet him at a specific place at a specific time. Clara's throat closed. You think someone was going to... I think he was being used as bait. I think whoever leaned on him to make that call intended for me to be in that parking garage this morning. I sent someone instead. Not to hurt him, to talk to him, to find out who was pulling on him and why. My man was there at 5:45. Halloran was already dead. Whoever did it to him and left before my man got there. I don't know yet if it was a punishment because he'd called me or a threat meant for me to find. I will know by tomorrow. I am telling you all of this, Clara, because I told you last night that I would not lie to you, and I'm going to keep that promise tonight, and it is going to be the hardest promise I have ever kept. She had sat down without realizing. Her knees had just given up. She was on the couch, and her hands were in her lap, and she was not crying, which surprised her. You sent someone, she said. Yes. To a meeting you thought was a trap. Yes. Knowing he might be killed. Knowing it was possible. I would not have sent him if I thought it was certain. He has been with me for a long time. He knew what he was walking into. He went. His name. I'm not going to tell you his name. Why not? Because you don't need to know it. And because if you ever had to testify about anything, I want you to be able to say honestly that you did not know it. Clara laughed. It was a small, sick sound. Testify. Clara, you're talking to me like a lawyer. I'm talking to you like a man who has thought about this, who has had to think about things like this for a long time. She put her face in her hands. She was not crying. She was just trying to make the room stop tilting. You said last night that if someone came for me, you would stop them with everything you had. Yes. Is someone going to come for me? Not if I can help it. That's not an answer. It's the only answer I have, Clara. I don't know. I don't think so. The people I am in disagreement with do not know about you yet. I have been very careful these 6 weeks. Mrs. Laurent is careful. My driver is careful. The only public appearance we have made together was the gallery opening, and the people there were not the people I worry about. But I will not tell you there is no risk. There is risk. There has been risk since the moment you walked through my front door the first time. And I knew it then, and I let you come anyway, and that is on me, and I will carry it for the rest of my life. Clara looked up. Her eyes were dry. Get out. Clara, so get out of my apartment. He looked at her. He nodded slowly. He did not argue. He walked to her door and put his hand on the knob and stopped. If you want a car to your mother's house tonight, I'll send one, he said, without turning around. No questions. The driver will not know why. You will not see me at the other end. I will not contact you again unless you contact me. Do you want the car? No. Clara, I don't want your car. Go. He went. She heard the stairs creak under him on the way down. She heard the front door of the building open and close. She heard faintly a car door and an engine, and then nothing. She sat on the couch for a long time. That night she did not sleep. She did not even try. She sat at her desk with her laptop open, and she read every article she could find about Dmitry Halloran, and she read every article she had read before about Voss Holdings, and she read about the federal investigation from 8 months earlier and the contractor in Somerville. And she read the Business Journal piece and 2 older pieces she had missed the first time, and by 4 a.m, she had a notebook open beside her laptop, and she was writing down names. Halloran. The contractor in Somerville, a man named Michael DeSantis. A city councilman who had been indicted in 2021. A man in Lynn who had disappeared in 2018 and whose disappearance had briefly been linked to a property dispute with a Voss subsidiary before the lead had gone cold. She was making a web in her notebook. She was the photographer. She was making an image of what she knew. At 5 a.m, she put the pen down and looked at what she had written, and what she had written looked like evidence. She had nothing, of course. She had a list of names and dates and articles any reporter with a search bar could have compiled. She had a photograph of a man at a window, which was not admissible anywhere, and a dinner she had eaten and a hand that had been held. She had no documents. She had no recordings. She had no idea if anything she suspected could ever be proven by anyone, much less by her. And yet she sat there looking at the notebook and felt, for the first time since October, not like a woman who had been seen by a powerful man, but like a woman who had seen one. It was 4 days before the man came. She was leaving her studio at 7:30 on a Tuesday, bundled against the cold, keys in hand to lock the back door behind her, and he was already standing at the bottom of the outside staircase looking up at her. Tall, thin, in a charcoal overcoat that was not expensive but was clean, maybe mid-50s. Gray crew cut, an unmemorable face that Clara, because she was a photographer, instantly memorized. "Miss Hayes, can I help you?" Detective Ray Colbeck, Massachusetts State Police. He held up a badge and a leather wallet. He did not climb the stairs. "I'd like 10 minutes of your time. Not here, somewhere you feel comfortable. A coffee shop if you want. Your choice." Clara's mouth was dry. "What's this about?" Adrienne Voss. She stood on the landing with her key in her hand and her breath making white clouds in the cold air. 10 minutes, the detective said. "Then, if you never want to see me again, I will not contact you again." She picked the coffee shop 3 blocks away, the noisy one, the one where she'd never be able to hear a recording clearly if he was making one. He did not appear to be. He ordered a black coffee, she ordered a tea she did not drink. They sat in the back by the window. He did not take out a notebook. He kept his hands on the table, visible, the way police sometimes did when they were trying to make you calm. "I know you've been seeing him," he said. I'm not asking you to confirm anything, Miss Hayes. I'm telling you what I already know. My people have been watching his house for 18 months. You have been there 6 times in the last 8 weeks. You were there the night Dimitri Halloran was killed. You left at 12:03 a.m. He came to your apartment the day after. He stayed 14 minutes. I have all of that already. I am not trying to entrap you. I am telling you that I know, so that you don't have to waste any of our time pretending you don't know him. Ni asra modsan. Clara did not speak. Here's what I came to say. The detective had a voice that sounded like he had been a reasonable man his whole life for a living, professionally reasonable. Adrienne Voss is not going to end well. I don't know when it ends and I don't know how, but I have been doing this job for 27 years and I can tell you that men like him have exactly 2 exits, a courtroom or a morgue, sometimes both in that order. I have been working on building a case against him for almost 4 years. We are close. We are not there. We need one more thing. A person close to him who saw something, heard something, was somewhere. A witness, not a wire. I am not asking you to wear a wire. I am asking you to consider if anything ever happens in your presence, or if you ever see anything or hear anything, if you ever find yourself thinking, I wish I could tell someone about this, that you tell me. He slid a card across the table. That's my cell, he said, not a switchboard. You call that, you get me, day or night. I won't ask you to do anything yet. I won't pressure you. I won't come back. This is a one-time conversation, Miss Hayes. I wanted you to know I existed and to know that you had a door. Clara looked at the card. She did not pick it up. Why me? She said. Because of your face. Excuse me. Your face, Miss Hayes. When I've watched you on the surveillance coming in and out of his house, I have watched a lot of women go in and out of a lot of houses belonging to a lot of men like him. I know what the face of a woman who has made her peace looks like. You haven't made your peace. You're still making up your mind. That's why. Clara's hand moved slowly and picked up the card. She did not put it in her pocket. She held it. I haven't agreed to anything. I know. I'm not saying I will. I know that too. He could, if he ever found out we'd talked. I thought a lot about whether to approach you. I came to the conclusion that he will never find out from me. What he finds out from you is between you and him. I cannot protect you from that choice, Miss Hayes. I can only tell you that the choice exists. Clara put the card in her coat pocket. 10 minutes is up, she said. It is. She stood. He stood. He held the door for her on the way out. On the sidewalk, he nodded once and walked away in the opposite direction from the one she needed to go, and she stood on the corner for a long time before she realized she was standing there, and then she walked home. She did not call Adrienne. He did not call her. 11 days passed, then 12. She went to her sister's for Thanksgiving. She went to her mother's for the weekend after. Her mother made turkey and asked her twice if she was okay, and Clara said she was tired, which was true. Her sister asked her once if she was seeing anyone, and Clara said no, which was not a lie in any sense that mattered. She worked. The Nilda Reyes project was real now. The spring show, the 25 photographs, and she started shooting for it in earnest in the second week of December. She made a list of places to go, people to photograph. She made herself stay busy because staying busy was the only thing that kept her from checking her phone. On December 12th at 9:40 at night, her phone rang. Blocked number. She answered. Hello. Clara. She sat down. She had been standing at her kitchen sink. She sat down on the floor, her back against the cabinets, and she closed her eyes. Adrian, how are you? I don't know. How are you? I am not well. What happened? Nothing. Nothing new. I just wanted to hear your voice. I told myself I wouldn't call. I am breaking that promise tonight. I wanted you to know I was breaking it on purpose. Adrian, let me say one thing and then I'll hang up, and then you can decide if I hear from you again. Okay. I did not kill Dmitry Halloran. I have not killed anyone. I have never killed anyone, Clara. I do not want you to believe me on that point because of anything I have done. You have no reason to. I want you to understand that the man you photographed at the window, you were right about him. You saw something true. What you saw was not a man who has killed. It was a man who has decided that he will, if he has to, who has made that decision and carries it and wakes up with it every morning and sleeps with it every night, and who has not had to act on it yet, but who knows he will. That is what you saw. That is what is in me. That is what is true. I'm telling you this because I'm tired of telling you other things. Good night, Clara. Adrian, the line clicked. She sat on the kitchen floor with her phone against her ear for a long time after the call ended. The floor was cold. Her back hurt. She did not move. She called Detective Colbeck the next afternoon. She did not call him to say yes. She did not call him to say no. She called him to ask a question, which was, if she, hypothetically, were to become a person who could answer questions for him, what exactly would that cost her? Not in dollars, in everything else. He met her at the same coffee shop. He spent 40 minutes answering her questions. He did not try to close her. He did not ask for anything. He told her honestly that if she ever testified in open court, her life as she knew it would end. Witness protection was an option, but it was not a reliable one, and it was not a pleasant one. He told her that without her testimony, with only what she knew secondhand, they could not build a case. He told her that she could help him, over time, quietly, in ways that would not put her in a courtroom, but that those ways were slower and thinner, and there was no guarantee they would ever come to anything. He told her that if she walked away from him today, he would never approach her again, and he meant it. Clara listened to all of it. Then she said, I'm not saying yes. I'm saying I'll think. That's all I asked. One question. Okay. If something happened to me, if I disappeared, or if I was hurt, or if I just stopped answering my phone one day, would you know? Detective Colbeck did not answer for a moment. When he did, his voice was very quiet. I would know, Miss Hayes. I would know the day it happened. I would make sure someone got held accountable for it. Would that be a comfort to me? No, it would not. I am not promising you a comfort. I am telling you a fact. She nodded. She stood. She did not shake his hand. That night she did not sleep. She sat at her desk with her laptop closed and her camera in front of her, and she thought about everything she had seen and heard and eaten and touched in the last 9 weeks. And she thought about Lorenzo Davide sitting in a church looking at his hands. And she thought about the contractor in Somerville. And she thought about Adrian Voss's cool, dry palm against her cheek in the snow. And she thought about the photograph at the window. And at 4 a.m, she picked up her camera and walked out into the empty streets of Dorchester and photographed the sunrise coming up over the 3-deckers and the dirty snow and the quiet. She did not know what she was going to do. She knew that she was no longer, in any sense, the woman who had stood in an alley in October with $43 in her checking account and taken a cream-colored business card from a stranger. She knew that whoever she was now was a woman who had a detective's number in one coat pocket and a dead man's name in her notebook and a photograph in her archive that nobody in the world was ever going to see except the man it was of, who had asked her not to show it and had not yet, as far as she knew, lied to her once. She stood on the corner of Dorchester Avenue with her camera in her hand and watched the city come awake around her. The light was coming up gray and pink over the water. Her fingers were cold. She was still there, she realized. She was still standing on the sidewalk where she had always stood. She was not running. She was not hiding. She was making a choice by not making one yet. And the not making was itself a choice, and she was going to have to answer for it eventually, to somebody. Her phone buzzed in her pocket. She looked at it. "Come to dinner tomorrow, please." She stood on the corner in the cold and she looked at the message for a long time. Then she put the phone back in her pocket without answering, and she lifted her camera and she took a picture of her own shadow on the sidewalk. Small, cold, leaning forward a little, the way a person leaned forward when they were walking into a wind that hadn't quite started blowing yet. She did not answer the text that morning, or that afternoon, or that evening. She went home from her sunrise walk, showered, ate half a piece of toast, and sat down at her desk to work. The Nilda Reyes project was supposed to be 25 photographs about Boston, and Clara had spent the last week telling herself she was shooting for it, which was true in the technical sense that she had been carrying her camera around and pressing the shutter button. It was not true in the sense that mattered. Nothing she had shot in the last 2 weeks had any weight to it. She could see that now, looking at the contact sheet spread across her desk. Neat, competent, well-composed, empty. She knew why. She had not let herself photograph the one thing she was actually thinking about. She sat at her desk with her coffee going cold for the second morning in a row, and she thought about the 2 coat pockets. The detective's card in one, Adrian's text in the other, in a different coat, but the geography of it felt the same. One on each side of her, waiting to see what she would reach for first. She reached for neither. She picked up her camera instead, and she went out. She walked for most of the day. She went to the North End first, to the bakery she had been to with Adrian on a Saturday morning in November, and she stood across the street from it for 15 minutes without going in. She took 3 photographs of the front of it, the woman behind the counter just visible through the glass, the old man at a table by the window with a paper open in front of him, a teenage boy in a puffy jacket leaning against the brick wall texting. None of those photographs was of Adrian. All of them were, somehow. She knew it when she pressed the button each time. She was starting to photograph his city the way she had once photographed him. She was starting to see it through the lens he had put into her hand without her noticing. She walked from there to the seaport and then to Beacon Hill. And she did not walk down Chestnut Street, not even once, not even to test herself. She walked the streets on either side of it. She photographed the servants' entrances, the back alleys, the places where the city that served the houses on Chestnut Street came and went. A woman in a kitchen uniform taking out a bag of trash. A delivery driver eating a sandwich on the hood of his truck. A groundskeeper clearing snow from a brick walkway with a small, sharp shovel. She got home at 4 in the afternoon with 370 frames on her memory card and a headache that started at the base of her skull and radiated forward. She did not download the card. She put the camera on her desk and sat down on her couch and looked at the phone on her coffee table. "Come to dinner tomorrow, please." Tomorrow was now tonight. She did not answer. She did not answer at 5 or 6 or 7. At 7:55, her phone buzzed again. "The car is waiting on your corner if you want it. No pressure. It will go home in 10 minutes if you don't come down." She sat very still. She knew what the smart thing was. She knew what she had been turning over in her hands since she had stood on a Dorchester corner at dawn and watched her own shadow lean into a wind that wasn't there. She knew what a version of her who had any sense left would do tonight, would stay on the couch, would let the 10 minutes pass, would call Detective Colbeck in the morning and start the slow, careful, permanent process of unmaking what the last 10 weeks had made of her. She stood up, she put on her coat, she went downstairs. The car was black, idling at the corner, and the driver, a man she had not seen before, younger than the first one, short hair, broad shoulders, got out and opened the back door for her without a word. Inside the car was empty. The heat was on. She slid in. He closed the door. He drove. They did not speak on the way over. Mrs. Laurent did not meet her at the door this time. The door was unlocked. Clara let herself in and stood in the front hall and smelled something cooking, something braised, something that had been going for hours. The house was quiet in a way it had not been on previous nights. There was no staff moving around, no sound of a radio in the kitchen, no Mrs. Laurent. Adrian came out of the library. He stopped when he saw her. He did not move for a second. Then he said, "You came." "Yes."
I didn't know if you would.
"Neither did I." He was in a white shirt, open at the collar, sleeves rolled up to his forearms the way they always were in this house. He looked thinner than he had 2 weeks ago. He looked tired in a way she had not seen him tired before. Not the sharp, alert tiredness of a man managing a crisis, but the older, settled tiredness of a man who had not been sleeping. "Mrs. Laurent is gone," he said. "What?" "For the night. I sent her home. I sent everyone home. I'm cooking." "You're cooking?" "Yes." "Adrian, I don't have much of a repertoire. I do one thing. I did it tonight. Come into the kitchen. You can sit at the counter. You can watch me finish it, or you can walk out the front door, or you can sit and not say anything at all. Whichever you want." She followed him into the kitchen. It was not the kitchen she would have imagined. It was smaller, older, the kind of kitchen that had been in this house since the house was built. A black and white tile floor worn smooth in the center of the room from 200 years of feet, a soapstone counter, a cast iron stove that had been converted to gas at some point in the mid-20th century. There was a pot on the back burner with the lid slightly askew, and the smell coming out of it was real food, the kind of food that had been started that morning and coaxed along all day. On the counter there was a cutting board with an onion on it, already half chopped, and a glass of red wine with an inch left in it, and a small stack of white plates. He went to the stove and lifted the lid and stirred something slowly, and the steam came up around his face and softened him, and for a second Clara forgot entirely the last 48 hours. Then she remembered. She sat down on the stool at the counter. She did not take her coat off. She set her bag on the floor at her feet. "What is it?" she said. "Beef, mostly. A stew my mother used to make. I watched her do it 100 times when I was a child. Every time I make it, I leave something out. I never know what. It's never as good. Is it good tonight? I don't know yet." He put the lid back on. He turned around and leaned against the stove and looked at her. "Clara," he said. "Don't." "Don't what?" "Don't say anything yet. Let me sit. Let me sit for a minute." He nodded. He picked up the wine glass and drank what was in it. He turned back to the onion and finished chopping it with a speed and neatness that suggested he had done it many more times than he claimed to cook. He scraped the onion into the pot. He put the lid back on. He wiped the board with a towel and hung the towel over the edge of the sink. Clara watched him. She had imagined a lot of versions of this evening on the way over in the car, and none of them had looked like this. None of them had been a man in his kitchen with an onion and a dented pot. She had imagined him polished, formal, the way he had always been with her. She had imagined the candles and the fireplace and the young man in the white shirt bringing soup. She had not imagined him in his own house alone, cooking something imperfect. She had not imagined this was a thing he did. "Did you tell Mrs. Laurent to leave?" she said. "Yes." "Why?" "Because I did not want there to be anyone in this house tonight but me, if you came. I did not want you to feel watched. I did not want you to be able to say, afterward, to yourself, that you had been managed. If there is any version of tonight where you feel managed, it is my fault, and I cannot undo it, but I tried to subtract as much as I could." Clara was quiet. "I spoke to a detective," she said. He did not turn around. He said, very evenly, "I wondered if you had." "You wondered." "I have been watched for almost 4 years, Clara. I have lived under surveillance the way other people live under the weather. Anyone who comes close to me is approached, eventually. I assumed they would get to you. I did not warn you, because warning you would have looked like coaching, and I did not want to coach you. I wanted you to meet him without any instruction from me." "You knew his name?" "Colbeck." "Yes." "He told me he had been watching your house for 18 months. He told me he knew every time I came." 18 months is correct. "He told me he wasn't asking me to wear a wire. He told me he wanted me to call him if I ever saw or heard anything." "That's the standard approach. He does it well. He's a careful man. I respect him, actually, in a way I can't explain to you without sounding strange." "You respect him?" "I do. He's trying to put me in a cage. He's trying to do it the right way, patiently, without burning down anything in the meantime. He's the opposite of the man who killed Dmitri Halloran. The man who killed Halloran is not patient. The man who killed Halloran is the kind of man who thinks a dead body is a piece of mail. Kolbeck is not that. Kolbeck is something I can understand. He stirred the pot again. He did not look at her. What did you tell him? He said. Nothing. Nothing at all? I told him I would think. I told him I was not saying yes and I was not saying no. I asked him what it would cost me to say yes. And what did he say? He said it would cost me my life as I know it. He was telling you the truth. I know. Adrian was silent. I have his card in my coat pocket right now, Clara said. I have not thrown it out. I have not put it in a drawer. I am carrying it around. Good. Good? Yes. Good. I want you to carry it. I want you to carry it until you are certain in either direction. If you ever use it, I will know why, and I will not hold it against you. I am telling you that now, in my kitchen, where I am not being recorded because I want you to hear it in my voice. If you call him, I will not come for you. I will not send anyone for you. Whatever happens to me after that will happen, and you will not be the reason I blame. Do you believe me? No. He laughed. It was a small, surprised, almost relieved sound. That's fair. I don't know what to believe from you, Adrian. I don't know what's a performance. I don't know when it's calculated and when it's not. I don't even know if you know the difference anymore. I know the difference tonight. Why tonight? Because I sent Mrs. Laurent home, because I'm chopping my own onion, because I have been trying for 6 weeks to let you see as much of me as I could let you see without losing you. And in the last 2 weeks, I realized that strategy was going to end with me losing you anyway. And tonight I decided I would rather lose you honestly than keep you through management. Clara did not answer. Her hands were cold in her lap. She put them on the warm soapstone of the counter, flat, palms down. He served the stew at 8:40. They ate at the kitchen counter, side by side, not facing each other, which was easier. He had been right about the stew. It was not as good as it was supposed to be. It was still very good. He watched her eat the first few bites and did not eat anything himself until she said, "It's good, Adrian. Eat." He ate. They did not speak much. When they did, it was about small things. A neighbor on Chestnut Street who had put up Christmas lights badly and refused to let anyone help him. A book Adrian had been reading, the way Clara's apartment building sounded at night. He asked her about the Nilda Reyes project. She told him she had been shooting but had not been getting anything good. He did not offer advice. He did not offer to help. He listened, and when she was done, he said, "You will find it. You're looking at the wrong thing still, but you will find it." What am I looking at? The city. The project is about the city. The project is about the city through you. You haven't let any of you into it yet. She set her spoon down. That's a dangerous thing to say to me right now. I know. They cleared the dishes together. He washed, she dried. It was the most domestic thing she had ever done with another human being in her adult life. And she was furious at herself for finding it comforting, and she found it comforting anyway. At 9:30, they went into the library. She did not plan to. He did not ask her to. They just walked out of the kitchen together, and the library was on the way to the front hall, and when she got to its doorway, she turned into it instead of continuing past it, and he followed her, and neither of them commented on what they had just done. He built up the fire. She sat in the armchair she had sat in the first night, the night he had told her he wanted a photograph of what she saw when she looked at him. He did not sit in the other armchair. He sat on the floor, in front of the fire, with his back against the bookshelf, a posture she had never seen him take before, a posture that made him, for the first time, look his age. "Tell me something I don't know about you," she said. "Like what?" "Something true. Something small. Something that wasn't in the Business Journal article." He thought for a while. "When I was 9, he said, my mother took me out of school for 2 weeks, and we went to a town outside Hamburg where her mother had grown up. My grandmother was dying. We sat in a room that smelled like camphor and old paper for 14 days. My grandmother could not speak by then. She could hold my hand. She held it with her left hand because her right had stopped working years earlier from a stroke. She was not a soft woman. She had never been. She held my hand very tightly. On the last day she died in the afternoon, and my mother did not cry in front of me. We went for a walk after, along a canal, and a dog on a barge barked at us, and my mother laughed at the dog, and then she cried, finally, looking at the water. That's the first time I remember seeing my mother cry. It was the last time for about 15 years. So, why are you telling me that story? Because you asked me for something small and true. No. Why that story? He looked into the fire. Because I have not told it to another human being in 41 years, he said. I have not even thought about it in any full way since it happened. I thought about it this afternoon while I was cooking. I thought, if she comes tonight, I will tell her something I have not told anyone. That's what I will give her, so that's what I'm giving you. Claire's throat hurt. That's not fair, she said. I'm aware. You can't keep doing this to me. I know. Adrian, come here. She went. She left the armchair and sat down on the floor next to him against the same bookshelf, her shoulder a few inches from his. She did not touch him. He did not touch her. They sat there together looking at the fire, and she could feel the heat of him along the side of her arm, through her sweater, the way she had felt the heat of the fire itself an hour earlier from across the room. He said quietly, What are you going to do, Clara? I don't know. Do you want to leave? No, that's the problem. I don't want to leave. I should walk out of here and call Colbeck in the morning and make the decision that would save my life. And I don't want to. I don't want to, and I don't know if it's because of you, or because of what you have made possible for me, or because I've been poor for so long that I confused being taken care of with being loved. I don't know. I don't know, Adrian, and you cannot help me know. You cannot. I have to sit with it alone, and I don't know how long it will take. Then sit with it as long as you need to. What if I need years? Then it will take years. What if, while I'm sitting with it, something happens to you, or to me? He turned his head toward her, very slowly. Then it happens. That's not a plan. There is no plan, Clara. There has never been a plan. There is only what happens next. They sat there for a long time. The fire burned down to the point where he had to get up and put another log on it, and he did. And he came back, and he sat in the same spot, a little closer this time, and their shoulders touched finally when he settled, and neither of them moved. She fell asleep sitting up against the bookshelf. She did not mean to. She had not slept properly in 2 weeks. The fire and the food and the exhaustion and the weight of every small true thing he had said had added up to a kind of warmth she could not stay awake against. And at some point her head tipped sideways and rested on his shoulder, and she was gone. She woke up at 5 in the morning. The fire had died. She was on the couch, not the floor. There was a blanket over her. Adrian was in the armchair across from her, still dressed, still in the same white shirt, watching her. How long have you been sitting there? She said. A while. You didn't sleep? No. Why? He didn't answer. He didn't have to. She sat up. She pushed the blanket off. She looked at him, and he looked at her, and she said, I have to go home. I have to be alone for a few days. I'm not leaving. I'm not running. I just need to be somewhere that isn't this house for a little while so I can hear myself think. Okay? I'll call you. Okay? Adrian. Yes. Don't. If something happens in the next few days, if something happens with Halloran, or with any of it, don't do anything that I'll have to. I won't. Promise me. I promise I will not make a decision you cannot live with in the next 3 days without telling you first. That is the promise I can make. That is the honest one. I cannot promise nothing will happen. I can promise that what I do in the next 3 days will be the smallest thing I can do. Okay. Okay. He called the driver. The driver came. Adrian walked her to the front door and stood in it, the way he had stood in it the first night he had let her in. And this time he leaned forward and kissed her, once, very lightly, on the side of her mouth. Not quite a kiss on the lips, not quite a kiss on the cheek, the kiss of a man who was trying to give her something without taking anything. She did not kiss him back. She also did not move away. She stood there and let it happen and closed her eyes for half a second and then opened them and walked out to the car. She spent 3 days alone. She did not answer her phone except to her mother. She did not go to the studio. She did not meet Marisol. She ate the food in her refrigerator, and when that ran out, she walked 2 blocks to the corner store and bought more. She slept. She slept for 12 hours one night and 10 the next, and by the third day she felt, for the first time in a month, like a person inside her own skin. She also photographed. She photographed her apartment, every corner of it, the chipped paint on her windowsill, the stack of photography books on the floor by her bed, the one she had owned since college, the one she had bought with money she didn't have, the pair of winter boots by the door with the salt stains, the fire escape with last week's snow still on the railing. She photographed herself in the bathroom mirror once, in the morning, without her glasses on, before she touched her face. She photographed the empty side of her bed. She was making the project. She understood that on the second day. She had been trying to make a project about the city, and she had been avoiding all along the thing she was actually photographing, which was a woman who had met a man. She was going to make the project about that woman. She was going to make it about a woman at a threshold. That was the project. She sat on her bedroom floor on the second afternoon and cried for about 20 minutes when she figured it out, and then she wiped her face and kept shooting. On the morning of the third day, she called Adrian. "I'm coming over tonight," she said. "All right. I'm not staying. I'm coming to talk. Whatever you need." "Adrian." "Yes. I'm going to tell you what I've decided. You're going to listen. I don't want you to argue with me. I don't want you to promise me anything else. I want you to hear me, and then I want you to tell me if you can live with it. Do you understand?" "Yes. Tonight. Tonight." She did not go to Chestnut Street that night at 7. She went at 8:30 on purpose because she did not want him to have the advantage of a composed welcome. He answered the door himself. He was in jeans and a sweater. Mrs. Laurent was not there again. The house was quiet. He had not cooked this time. He had bread and cheese and 2 apples on the kitchen counter and a bottle of wine that was already open. She did not sit. She stood in the kitchen across the counter from him, and she put her hands flat on the soapstone the way she had 3 days earlier. "I'm not going to the detective," she said. He did not react. "I'm not calling him. I'm not going to see him again. That's my decision. I'm making it today, and I'm not revisiting it." "All right. I'm also not moving in here. I'm not becoming the woman in the house. I have a lease. I have a studio. I have a project. I have a life that is mine, and I am keeping it. And you are going to understand that the life I had before I met you is not something you bought with dinners, and it is not something you can take over now just because I understand. And the photograph at the window, the one you own, I want one other copy. I'm not going to show it to anyone. I'm not going to publish it. I want one copy in a drawer in my apartment because it is the best thing I have ever made, and I cannot live the rest of my life knowing the only copy is in your house." He was quiet for a long moment. Then he nodded once and said, "Yes. And if something ever happens, if the thing you told me you were capable of ever becomes the thing you have done, I need you to tell me, not afterward, before. I need you to come to me before. Do you understand what I am asking?" "Yes." "I am not asking to approve. I am not your conscience, Adrian. I cannot be that. I would not survive being that. I am asking to not be surprised. I am asking to not find out in the newspaper. I am asking that if you ever decide to cross that line, you cross it in front of me and not behind my back. Because if I find out later by accident, I will become Colbeck's witness the next day. I am telling you that now. I am telling you what will break me." He did not speak for a very long time. "Yes, Clara," he said finally. "I hear you. Do you agree?" "I agree." "Say it." "I agree that if I ever cross that line, I will tell you before I do. I agree that you deserve to not be surprised. I agree that your life is your life and it is not something I have purchased. I agree that you will have a copy of the photograph. I agree to all of it." She exhaled. She had not known she was holding her breath. She had been holding it, she realized, since she had walked into the house. She came around the counter slowly. She stood in front of him. She put her hands on his chest, flat, the way she had put them on the soapstone, and she looked up at him. "I'm choosing this," she said. "I want you to know that. Nobody chose it for me. You did not trick me. You did not buy me. I am not a victim of you, Adrian. I am a woman who knows exactly what you are and is choosing to stand here anyway. I want you to carry that because I'm going to have to carry it too, and I do not want to carry it alone." He put his hands over hers. He closed his eyes for a second. When he opened them, she saw for the first time what he looked like when he was not holding anything back. No curtain, no window, no portrait sitter's composure. What she saw was a tired man with a great deal of grief in him, and something else, something she did not yet have a name for, which she would eventually have to give a name to or live without naming forever. "I will carry it," he said. "I promise you that." She believed him. She stepped into him then and put her face against his chest, and he put his arms around her finally, for the first time. And she stood in the kitchen of a dead German son on Chestnut Street in a city she had been born in and held on to the only thing in it she had ever wanted that she was almost certainly going to lose. Outside, somewhere in the city, a siren went by. Neither of them moved. The winter that followed was the coldest winter Boston had seen in 10 years, and Clara Hayes remembered almost none of it. She remembered the work. She remembered the work with a clarity she remembered almost nothing else with. Between the second week of December and the first week of April, she made 93 photographs that she considered finished, and 25 of them were going to hang on Nilda Reyes's walls in May. She shot them in her apartment and on the streets near it, and on the trains she took to Adrian's house, and on the sidewalks outside his house when she left in the morning. She shot them in the bakery in the North End, finally. She went back alone, 3 times, and on the 3rd time the woman behind the counter spoke to her in Italian, and then apologized in English, and then spoke to her in English. And Clara photographed her hands kneading dough, and that was one of the 25. She shot a portrait of Marisol in the dark room under the red safe light. Marisol's face looking up from the developing tray with an expression that was exactly what Marisol looked like when she was making something. That was one of the 25. She shot herself 3 times for the project, and kept one of them. A self-portrait in the bathroom mirror of her apartment on a morning in February, in a white t-shirt, no makeup, her hair down, her face so tired it had gone past tired into something quieter, almost serene, the face of a person who had stopped negotiating with her own life and had decided to inhabit it. She did not photograph Adrian for the project. She had not planned to, and she did not try. What was between them did not belong on a wall. She understood that from the beginning, and he understood it, and neither of them ever brought it up. She lived, more or less, in 2 places. She kept her apartment in Dorchester, and she kept paying the lease on it out of her own earnings, which grew through the winter from the magazine work and a handful of private commissions Nilda Reyes sent her way. She spent, at most, 2 nights a week at Chestnut Street, sometimes 3, never more than 3. She had decided early on that this was the rule, and she enforced the rule, mostly on herself. Adrian did not ask her to come more often. He did not ask her to come less. He accepted the 2 or 3 nights the way he accepted the weather, and the other nights he did whatever he did with his life that he did not do in front of her, which she had decided she did not need to know about. They settled slowly into something that neither of them had ever had before. She had imagined in the first weeks after the kitchen that the thing between them would be consuming, dramatic, the kind of thing she had seen in films about women who loved dangerous men. It was not. It was quieter than that and harder. What they had, in the end, was not passion. It was attention. He paid close attention to her. He noticed when she had not eaten. He noticed when she was not sleeping. He asked questions and remembered the answers weeks later. When she was working, he left her alone. When she was not working, he read in the armchair across from her while she read in the other one. They went to dinner at small restaurants where the owners knew him and did not ask questions. They went to 2 concerts. They took one weekend, in late February, and drove up to a house on the coast of Maine that he had bought a decade earlier and almost never used, and they walked on the beach in the cold and ate canned soup in the kitchen and did not speak, most of the time, because there was nothing that needed to be said. She knew, all of it, that she was living inside a thing she had been warned about. She did not let herself forget. She kept the detective's card in the inside pocket of her coat, and she replaced the coat in March with a lighter one, and she moved the card into the lighter one. She did not call Colbeck. She also did not throw the card away. Adrian did not speak much that winter about his work. What he did speak about was rationed and deliberate. He told her in January that the man who had killed Dmitri Halloran had been identified, not to the police but to him, through channels he did not describe. He told her in the same conversation that he had not done anything about it. When she asked him why, he said, "Because I made you a promise. The promise was that you would tell me before." Yes. Telling me before and not doing it at all aren't the same thing. I know, I have decided they are the same thing for me, for now. It is easier than the alternative. Adrian. Yes. Is the man who did it going to come after you? Probably not. Probably. Clara, I cannot promise you what other people will do. I can only promise you what I will do. If he comes for me, I will defend myself, and I will tell you about it. If he does not, I will leave him alone. That is the arrangement I am living under. It is the arrangement you asked me to live under. I am not complaining about it. I am telling you the shape of it. She nodded. She did not ask again. What she learned over that winter was that living close to a man who had the capacity for violence was not like she had imagined it. It was not a continuous thrum of danger. It was long stretches of ordinary life, interrupted every so often by the quiet detonation of some small fact. A man named Novak, in February, who came to the house one evening and sat in the library with Adrian for an hour and left without meeting Clara, and whom Adrian refused afterward to discuss, except to say, "He is someone I was afraid of for 20 years and am no longer afraid of, and I would like to not talk about why." A phone call in the middle of the night in March that sent Adrian out of bed and into the study for 40 minutes, and when he came back he did not say what it had been, and she did not ask. The news, in April, that a man in Revere whose name had been in her notebook for months, a man she had written down in those dark hours after Halloran's death, had been arrested on federal charges in an unrelated case, and that the arrest, according to the paper, had been the result of a tip from a cooperating witness whose identity was sealed. Adrian read the article at breakfast on the morning it ran. He put the paper down and looked at her across the table and said, "That was not me. I didn't ask if it was." "I know. I wanted to tell you anyway." "Thank you." The tip was from someone I have known for a long time. Not a friend, an associate. He decided some time ago that he preferred to be useful to Colbeck than to me. I have known this for almost a year. I have done nothing about it. I continue to do nothing about it. I am telling you in case the name comes up. Clara sat for a minute with her coffee. "Does Colbeck have enough?" she said. "To do what?" "To finish what he's trying to finish." Adrian looked out the window. The kitchen window faced the back garden, and the snow had finally started to melt from it, and the small stone fountain at the center was beginning to re-emerge, stained green from the winter. "I don't know," he said. "He has more than he had a year ago. He has less than he will have in a year. He is patient. He is careful. He is making a case the way you would make a photograph, slowly, with the right light." "What happens if he finishes it?" "I go to prison, or I run." "I am not going to run." "Adrian, Clara, we have discussed this. I've had this conversation with myself for 20 years. The calculations are done. I will not run. If he finishes his case, he finishes it. I will not spend the rest of whatever life I have left looking over my shoulder from a rented apartment in some country I did not choose to live in. I would rather be in a cell in Massachusetts than on a beach in a place I do not belong. Is that a real choice people have? For some people. Not many. For me? Yes. How do you know? Because I have the resources to make it a choice. Most people do not. She looked at him. She did not say what she was thinking, which was that the fact that this was a choice he could make and most people could not, was, all on its own, the summary of everything she had been trying not to think about all winter. The show opened at Reyes Fine Art on the 14th of May, a Thursday, at 6 in the evening. Clara wore a navy dress that Nilda Reyes had insisted she buy, and low heels that hurt by 7. She had not slept much the night before. She had eaten almost nothing that day. By 5:30, she was standing in the back of the gallery with a glass of water in her hand and the shakes in her stomach, and the certainty, the absolute certainty, that all 25 photographs on the walls were terrible, and everyone who came tonight would notice at the same moment and the room would empty out in silence. This did not happen. The room filled up instead. Nilda had sent invitations to every photographer, critic, collector, and editor she had ever done business with, and at 6:15, Clara's little gallery on the second floor of a Newbury Street brownstone held something like 120 people. Clara circulated. She did not remember later what she said to any of them. She remembered standing in front of the self-portrait, the one from February, the one in the bathroom mirror, with a woman in her 60s, a critic whose reviews Clara had read for years in a magazine she used to buy with money she did not have, and the woman said, "This is the one. This is the one I'm going to write about." "Which one?" "This one, the mirror. You are in all of these, Miss Hayes. You are in the bread, and in the train windows, and in the woman in the dark room. This is the only one you are in on purpose. I want to write about what's different about this one." "What is different?" "You're looking." "I'm always looking. That's my job." The critic smiled. "No, you're looking in this one. The others, you're seeing. That's a different thing." Clara stood in front of her own face on the wall for a long moment after the critic walked away. Adrian had said he might come. He had said he would not come if it was a distraction, and that he understood if she asked him not to come. She had not asked him not to come. She had not asked him to come either. She had left it to him, which meant, she knew, that she was leaving it to the last 4 months of his life to decide. He came. She did not see him come in, because she was on the other side of the room when he did, answering a question from a young man who wanted to know what camera she had used for the bakery photograph. When she turned around, he was standing just inside the door, in a dark suit and a gray tie, and he was not looking at the photographs. He was looking at her. She excused herself. She crossed the room. Nilda Reyes appeared at her elbow for a second and then, reading whatever was on Clara's face, disappeared again. Clara stopped 2 feet in front of Adrian. "You came." "I told you I would try." "You did." "I'm not going to stay long. I wanted to see them. This is a night for you, Clara. I will stay 20 minutes. I will look at the photographs. I will shake your hand if anyone important is watching, and otherwise I will not speak to you again tonight. I will go home. You will stay. You will have dinner with Nilda afterward, the way you planned. I will see you tomorrow if you want, or the day after, whenever you want." She nodded. "Walk through them with me," she said. "Clara, I'm not asking as a performance. I'm asking because I want you to see them with me. Once. I can do the rest of the night without you. I can do tomorrow without you. Tonight, this part, I want to do with you. Walk with me." He walked with her. They went slowly around the room. She did not explain the photographs to him. He did not ask. He stopped in front of each one for a long enough time to actually look at it, which was more than most of the guests had done. At the self-portrait, the one from the bathroom mirror, he stood for nearly a minute. "This one," he said quietly. "Yes. This is the best one." A critic said the same thing 20 minutes ago. She was right. Adrian. "Yes, I know why it's the best one. I know what she meant. I want you to tell me what you think without hearing what she said." He looked at the photograph. "You are not pretending in this one," he said. "You are not arranged. You are not holding the camera up for an audience. You are not thinking about what anybody is going to see. You are looking at yourself because there is no one else in the room, and you are seeing what is there, and you are not flinching. That is what is in this picture. That is what is in none of the others, because you are still performing in the others, a little. Not for the viewer, for yourself. You stop performing for yourself in this one. All we try to suffer scene." She was crying, quietly, not dramatically, but it was happening, and she could not stop it. She turned her face away from the room and put her hand over her mouth for a second. "Sorry," she said. "Don't apologize. I don't want to be photographed crying in front of my own photograph." "Then let's walk." He walked her, unhurriedly, to the far corner of the gallery, where Nilda kept a small alcove with a window that looked out over Newbury Street. He stood between her and the room. He did not touch her. He stood there in his suit and gave her the 30 seconds she needed to put herself back together. "I have to tell you something," he said, very quietly. "Now. Not here. Come to the house tomorrow, in the morning. Come for breakfast. I will send the car at 9. Will you come?" "Adrian, what is it?" "It's not an emergency. It is not a crisis. It is a conversation I have been trying to have with you for 2 weeks, and I kept postponing because I did not want to have it before tonight. I do not want to have it here either. Come tomorrow, please." She looked at him. She had learned by now to read his face. What was there was not fear. It was something heavier than fear, older than fear, the look of a man who had made a decision. "I'll come," she said. "Thank you." He did not stay the full 20 minutes. He shook Nilda's hand. He shook the critic's hand. He bought, without telling Clara until later, 2 of the photographs, and asked Nilda to reserve them for shipping to Chestnut Street at the end of the show. He left at 7:10. Clara watched him go through the door without looking back. She did dinner afterward. She drank 2 glasses of wine with Nilda and the Cuban photographer and a journalist from the Globe. She smiled. She answered questions. She was, in most of the ways that counted, somewhere else the entire time. She went to Chestnut Street in the morning. The car was there at 9. Adrian opened the front door himself. He was in jeans and a dark green sweater, and he had not shaved. He looked like he had not slept. "Come into the kitchen," he said. She followed him. He had made coffee. He had not made anything else. They sat at the counter on the 2 stools where they had sat on the night he had sent Mrs. Laurent home, and he poured her a cup, and he did not drink his. "I'm going to do something," he said, "and I am telling you first, the way I promised." Clara set the cup down carefully. "Okay. I'm going to call Raymond Colbeck tomorrow morning, and I am going to offer him a proffer." She did not understand the word for a second. Then she did. "Adrian, listen. You're going to cooperate. I'm going to have a conversation, under immunity, about a range of things I have observed in 30 years. Not about myself. I am not confessing to anything, Clara. I do not have anything to confess to in the way you might imagine. I am telling him what I know about other people. I am going to give him the man who killed Dmitri Halloran. I am going to give him 2 other men whose names you don't know and whom I am not going to tell you. I'm going to give him information about a federal case he has been working for 2 years that he is almost certainly going to lose without me. In exchange, I am going to receive a formal declination on any matter related to my father's, to what my father built before 1998. I have a lawyer who has been negotiating the terms of this for 11 months. It is close to final. I was going to tell you last week. I decided to wait for after the show." Clara did not speak. She could not. She put her hands on the counter the way she had put them on the counter in December. "Why?" she said finally. "Because I am 48 years old. Because I do not have a child. Because my sister will not speak to me. Because the thing you saw in the photograph at the window, the thing you saw in me that first night, I have decided I do not want to be anymore. Because I have been, for most of my adult life, a man who calculated what he could get away with. And I realized somewhere this winter that I did not want the rest of my life to be that calculation. Because I met you. Don't. I am not saying you saved me. I am saying I met you, and I had to decide who I was going to be in front of you, and I found out that I could not be the man I had been. Not for you. For me, looking at me through you. That is the truth. That is the small, embarrassing, middle-aged truth. I met a woman who took a photograph of me, and I could not stand to be the man in the photograph anymore." Clara's eyes were full. She did not let the tears go. "What happens to you after the proffer?" "I become a man who is not going to prison. I become a man whose company will be audited for 5 years and who will pay some fines and who will, in most of the ways that matter, go on with his life. I become a man who no longer has the friends he used to have, some of whom will be angry, some of whom I have arranged protection against, some of whom I cannot entirely arrange protection against. I become, probably, a man who has to be more careful for a while than he used to be. I become, in the long term, a man who sleeps better than he used to. Are you going to be safe?" "I don't know. I have hired additional security. I have moved some things. I have been preparing for this for almost a year. I am about as safe as I can be. I am not going to tell you I am guaranteed. There is no guarantee in the world I come from. There is only preparation. Am I going to be safe?" "Yes. I have given a great deal of thought to that question, Clara. You are the question I have given the most thought to. I have arranged things so that your name appears nowhere in anything. You are not in any documents. You are not in any testimony. Colbeck's surveillance logs will not be used. My lawyer has negotiated that. You are invisible in this whole process. That was the condition I refused to move on. They accepted it. And what about the men? The man who killed Halloran, when he gets arrested, when he knows it came from you, is he going to... No. He is going to prison for a long time. The other people who might object to what I am doing are people who are, themselves, being taken down in the same action. There is no one left, when this is done, who has both the ability and the motivation to come for me, or for anyone close to me. I have thought this through. I have hired people to think it through with me. I have thought it through alone at 4 in the morning for months. I'm not saying it is zero. I am saying it is as close to zero as I can make it. Anything less than this, Clara, any other version of my life, has a higher number on it. I promise you that. Wait, she believed him. She sat at the counter with both her hands flat on the stone, and she tried to find any part of what he had said that she did not believe, and she could not find any. Why did you wait until after the show? She said. Because if I told you before, you would have been distracted during the show. You would have been thinking about this instead of thinking about your work. I did not want the best night of your career to be the night I told you the hardest thing I have ever told you. I wanted you to have that one night clean. That was not your decision to make. I know. You should have let me decide. I know. I am sorry. I made the wrong call, and I'm telling you I made the wrong call. I am also telling you I would make the same wrong call again if I had to. I do not know how to separate those two things in myself. Clara let out a long breath. When is the meeting? Tomorrow, 10 a.m., in a room at the Federal Building. I will be there for most of the day. My lawyer has been there many times. I have not. I am more nervous than I want you to know. Do you want me to come? No. Adrian, I want you nowhere near that building. I want you nowhere near this process. I want your name nowhere near mine in any file, anywhere. I want you to spend the day at your studio. I want you to go to dinner with your friend, the one who teaches at the community college. I want you to treat tomorrow like a day that is yours. I will call you tomorrow night when it is done. I will tell you how it went. That is the arrangement I am asking for. Will you give me that? She looked at him. Yes. Thank you. Adrian. Yes. I am proud of you. He closed his eyes. It was the first time she had ever seen him do that in front of her. He sat on the stool with his eyes closed for maybe 4 seconds. When he opened them, she saw something she had never seen in him before either. Relief, the specific, undignified relief of a man who had been afraid he would not be forgiven and had just found out he would be. She did what he asked. She spent the next day at her studio. She edited a corporate shoot she had been putting off. She had lunch alone at the sandwich place on the corner. She called Marisol at 3 and asked if she was free that night, and Marisol was. And they met at a small Italian place in the South End and ate pasta and drank red wine, and Marisol talked about her nephew's quinceañera and did not ask Clara a single question about her life, which Clara understood as a gift. At 9:30, she went home. At 10:15, her phone rang. It's done. How did it go? As well as it could have. I am coming out of this the way we hoped. It will take months. It will not be clean, but the shape of it is what my lawyer said it would be. I am tired, Clara. Come over. A pause. To your apartment. Yes. I have not been to your apartment since the day after Halloran. I know. Come over. Tonight. I want you here. He came over. The driver let him off at the corner and drove away. He climbed the 3 flights of stairs slowly, and she opened the door before he knocked because she had been listening for him. He came in. He stood in her living room in the same suit he had worn to the Federal Building. He looked 10 years older than he had looked a week earlier. He looked exactly his age for the first time in the time she had known him. He looked, she thought, like a man who had put something down that he had been carrying for a very long time and had not realized, until he put it down, how heavy it had been. She took his jacket. She hung it on the hook by her door. She sat him down on her couch, the couch where she had sat with an envelope full of his money in October. She made him tea because she understood with a kind of certainty she could not explain that he did not want to drink. She sat down next to him, and he put his head in her lap, which he had never done before, and she put her hand in his hair, and she did not say anything for a long time. He fell asleep on her couch at 11:40. She covered him with the blanket from the back of the chair. She sat in the armchair across from him and watched him sleep for a while. His face in sleep was a face she had not photographed and would not photograph. She understood that it was hers, and only hers, and that some things were yours precisely because you did not make them into anything. Oh. She married him the following autumn in a civil ceremony at the house on Chestnut Street with 14 people present. Her mother, her sister, Marisol, Nilda Reyes, the Cuban photographer who had become a friend, Detective Raymond Colbeck, of all people, whom Adrian had invited and who, after some conversation that neither of them ever fully described to anyone, had come. Mrs. Laurent, who brought her own husband, whom Clara had never met in 3 years. Adrian's attorney and his attorney's wife. The sister he had not spoken to in 11 years, who had called him the week the newspapers ran the story of the proffer, and had said to him on the phone, "I will come back into your life. I will come back carefully. I am not ready to forgive you for everything. I am ready to begin." 3 weeks before the wedding, his sister had started speaking to him again, slowly, in small letters. Clara wore a cream-colored dress. She did not wear a veil. Her hair was down. She walked across the library, the same library where she had once sat in an armchair on the first night of knowing him, and she stood across from him in front of a small woman from the city clerk's office, who read out the words, and Clara said the words back, and so did he. She made one photograph that day. Not a wedding portrait. A photograph of the back of Mrs. Laurent in the kitchen after the ceremony, folding a cloth napkin. Mrs. Laurent had never let Clara photograph her. Mrs. Laurent had said that afternoon, "Today you may take one, only one." Clara took one. It was good. Years later, and there were years, more years than anyone who had known them in the first winter would have predicted, Clara would say, to the few people who asked her, that she did not believe she had saved him, and she did not believe he had saved her. What she believed, she would say, was that people did not save each other. People saw each other. That was what love was, when it was worth anything. It was seeing, and going on seeing, and not flinching, and not pretending, and not arranging your life to make the seeing easier. It was standing next to someone, over and over, and letting them be exactly as much as they were, and being exactly as much as you were in return. She would say, also, though she said this to fewer people, and only to people she trusted, that she did not think the choice she had made in the kitchen that December night had been the right choice in any moral sense she could defend to a stranger. She had made a choice that was hers. She had looked at a man who had done things she could not forgive and could not condone, and she had stayed. She had not pretended to herself that staying was good. She had not pretended to herself that the life she lived afterward, the money, the house, the sabbaticals, the mornings in the kitchen with the light coming through the window over the sink, had come to her without cost. She had decided to live with what she had done, and to live well with it, and to let her work carry some of what she could not put anywhere else. The photograph of Adrian at the window was in her drawer until the day he died. It was the only photograph of him that she kept. After he died, she burned it. She did not tell anyone ever why. She lived for a long time after that. She made 4 more shows. She taught briefly at the community college in Quincy, in Marisol's old classroom, after Marisol retired. She did not remarry. She had no children. She kept the house on Chestnut Street, and when she was very old, she gave it to a foundation that put underprivileged photographers through art school, which Adrian had funded quietly for years, and which she made public in her own name after he was gone. The bakery in the North End closed in 2041. The woman who had run it died. The old man at the table by the window had died long before. The city changed, the way cities always did, in ways nobody who lived through the changes could quite believe afterward. What remained was the work. What remained was the 25 photographs from the first show at Nilda Reyes, 2 of which now hung in permanent collections. What remained was the self-portrait from the bathroom mirror, which had become, in time, the photograph that appeared in textbooks when the books needed one photograph to stand for a career. The woman in that photograph was 31 years old. She was tired. She was not smiling. She was looking at herself in a mirror in an apartment she could barely afford. In a white t-shirt, on a morning she did not remember, in a city she had been born in, and she was not flinching from what was in the mirror. She had not yet decided, on the morning that photograph was taken, what kind of life she was going to live. She had 2 cards in 2 pockets, and a man she loved, and a man in her notebook who had been murdered, and the ordinary, specific, unbearable weight of any real life at the moment. It asked you what you were going to do with it. She was not looking at the camera. There was no camera for her to look at. There was only a mirror, and behind the mirror a wall, and behind the wall the rest of a city full of people trying, most of them badly, some of them well, to see themselves honestly for one morning before whatever came next. That, in the end, was the picture. That was what the photograph had been about, all along. And it is what her story comes down to. In the end, not the man, not the money, not the choice between the 2 envelopes she carried in her coat. It comes down to a woman who decided, one winter, to stop performing for herself, To look in the mirror without turning the lights down. To stay when staying cost something, and to leave within herself what needed to be left, and to put down on paper, or on silver, or on pixels, or on whatever surface she could find. The only thing any of us really has to offer each other when the performance stops, what we saw, while we were here with our own eyes, honestly. The rest was just weather,